Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone so much for joining us today. My name is Samantha Tank, and I'm a program specialist here at the Great Lakes Commission. And some of my responsibilities are the coordination and administration of the Great Lakes Phragmites Collaborative and the Phragmites Adaptive Management Framework. And then joining me on the line today is Ned Willig, and he's also a program specialist at the Great Lakes Commission. Ned is going to be assisting us with any technical issues, and he'll also be facilitating the Q&A session at the end. So before we get started, I just wanted to go over a few housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded, and a recording will be available on the Great Lakes Phragmites Collaborative website either later today or tomorrow. It will send an email out to everyone through Eventbrite and also through our listserv to let you know when that recording is available. If you are having any technical issues, you can email us at phragmites@glc.org, and we'll try to assist you as quickly as we can. Otherwise, feel free to submit questions through the Q&A box that's at the bottom of your screen, and we'll hold all questions until the end, but we should have plenty of time. Just a fair warning, our internet has been a little bit spotty today, so if I do freeze for a second, Ned may have to shortly fill in, but hopefully I will be able to resurface quickly. Now, just jumping into a little bit of background before we discuss the Great Lakes Phragmites Collaborative, I wanted to set the scene a little bit to get us all on the same page regarding invasive species, and particularly aquatic invasive species. In the Great Lakes, there are 190 established non-native species. Some of those 190 species require control efforts that cost hundreds of millions of dollars just in our region alone. Although the solution to controlling non-native and invasive species may seem pretty straightforward, just removing them from the system, it's almost never that simple. Instead, we're left with this long-term wicked problem that unfortunately just doesn't have a universal set of solutions. This figure represents an invasion curve, or the process that non-native species move through to become invasive. It's important to note that not all non-native species are invasive or will become invasive at some point in the future. For a species to become invasive, there has to be documented signs of harm. And this harm can either be ecological, economic, or even human health. So a species is going to move along this curve by overcoming a variety of barriers. A species will start out in their home range, where generally they're desirable and they're considered native. And then for them to move to a new area, they need a way to move from their native range to the introduced range. And this movement is nearly always human mediated. It's a result of human activity, whether intentional or unintentional. So once present in a new area, the species must be well suited to the new environment in order to grow and reproduce. And if they indeed are successful, this is when localized populations are formed. The next barrier that they must overcome is spread out of that initial area where they were introduced to. The spread can either be human mediated again, or it can be by natural means of dispersal. So if a species is able to spread, then they can establish new secondary populations in additional locations. And then if spread is continued, this is when we see widespread establishment. We do have some tools in our invasive species tool chest, per se, to combat invasive species. Our first line of defense is to prevent new non-native species from being initially introduced into the area, or spreading from an area where they're currently present into additional areas where they can establish as well. This generally happens through outreach and education efforts. However, once a species is present in a new area, but before it's spread to secondary locations, we do sometimes have the ability to detect its presence early on and eradicate them on a local level. Although once the species spreads to secondary locations, eradication efforts are generally not successful. So once a species reaches widespread establishment, our really only option is to establish long-term monitoring and control programs. And this is where a lot of the money goes. They require substantial investment of time and resources. So all non-native aquatic invasive species that are established in the Great Lakes have a place somewhere on that invasion curve that we just went over, although not all of them are going to become invasive or have widespread establishment. However, Phragmites australis is one such species that has. So also called common reed, Phragmites is a non-native invasive species found in the Great Lakes region. Phragmites is a wetland grass, and it can quickly spread and take over a new area. If you're not familiar with Phragmites, these are two pictures that highlight its substantial growth. As you can see, it's not uncommon to find mature patches of Phragmites that are growing 4+ meters tall. This growth happens really quickly as well, since the grass dies off each winter and then is resprouted from their rhizomes or their extensive underground root network each spring. The dead stems typically remain standing for a few years, causing the patches to be extremely dense and preventing other plants from growing. You can imagine that there's quite a bit of shade that happens in these patches, and not only are they preventing plants from growing, but it's difficult to navigate through either as a person, a manager, a public individual, or if you are a wildlife species as well. We do have a native variety of Phragmites that's present in North America, and it's called Phragmites australis subspecies americanus. Although it looks very similar to our invasive variety that's native to Europe, native Phragmites does not form these dense patches that prevents other wetland plants from growing. Instead, it grows nicely alongside other plant species and is generally a healthy part of our wetland ecosystems. So when I refer to Phragmites for the remainder of the briefing, I am just referring to the non-native invasive variety. Phragmites is not a new invasive either to North America. It arrived on the East Coast probably sometime in the late 1700s or maybe early 1800s from Europe. It was likely incidentally brought over as ship ballast material before water was used as ballast, and then also intentionally brought over in secondary introduction events in later years. Now, as you can see from the map, Phragmites is not just this localized issue. I'm here in the Metro Detroit area of Michigan right now, and it's not just a problem surrounding me or a problem in the Great Lakes, but it's actually this binational problem that spans North America. And like I said, when we were looking at that invasion curve, a non-native species does not become invasive unless we have documented signs of harm. And with Phragmites, there are many documented signs of harm. But when I think about what those negative impacts are, I do tend to break them up into 3 categories: how Phragmites impacts our water, our wildlife, and then us as individuals, people, our way of life. Water being one of our most vital resources that we have, especially in the Great Lakes region, it's certainly relevant to think about how that resource is being impacted by invasive Phragmites. When dense stands are present in wetlands, ponds, or other small water bodies, even drainage ditches or agricultural ponds, they've been known to reduce water levels, even alter flow patterns. Although Phragmites can be found in drier ecosystems, it is a typical wetland grass and can quickly take over a wetland, preventing our native plant species from growing and surviving. Phragmites also impacts our native fish and wildlife. These dense stands can take over habitats that are essential for many reptile and amphibian species, preventing them from nesting, finding food, or even accessing open water, which is a critical part of completing their life cycle. But it's not just the turtles and the frogs that are being threatened by Phragmites. The large patches that this plant can form supports fewer insect species that are a critical food source for many of our aerial foraging birds. The patches also replace critical marsh nesting bird habitat that is required by waterfowl like ducks and geese. And so this is why we're seeing agencies such as the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, organizations like Ducks Unlimited, the Nature Conservancy, all managing Phragmites in order to restore that critical wildlife habitat that's being lost. But it's not only our ecological resources that are being harmed by invasive species. People and society in general are also being impacted. Dense stands of Phragmites may cause inconveniences such as obstructed access to recreational activities like fishing and hunting or even swimming. It can also have economic impacts such as decreased home values when Phragmites is found growing nearby. And there's many safety hazards, unfortunately, associated with Phragmites patches. The buildup of dried stems creates a fire hazard, which can burn very hot and quick. And you can imagine this is not something you want when your home or business is situated next to a large Phragmites patch. One of the other places that we've probably all seen Phragmites growing is along roadsides or right-of-ways. And not only can Phragmites cause a lot of damage to the surrounding infrastructure, but it can also block sight lines, road signs, and safety equipment such as fire hydrants. There's a freeway close to where I'm at in Michigan, and it actually goes underground for a period of time. And there's 20-foot walls maybe, and I've seen Phragmites growing at the base of those walls, 20 feet underground, coming up through the pavement and breaking up that concrete. So it's not something, it's not a plant that requires a really specialized habitat, and you can find it just about anywhere. Phragmites impact such a wide variety of people and industries that it's become a high priority management species for a huge diversity of reasons. Thinking back to that invasion curve that I showed you, you might be wondering where Phragmites is along the invasion curve. Well, in the Great Lakes region, it's reached widespread establishment for sure, and is being spread to new locations faster than it can be controlled in the existing ones where established populations are already known to be found. So all of this background and many more reasons, this is why in 2012, partners from the Great Lakes Commission and the U.S. Geological Survey came together to establish the Great Lakes Phragmites Collaborative. And funding for the collaborative has been provided by the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. The mission of the collaborative is to facilitate communication among stakeholders across the region and serve as this resource center for all things Phragmites, including biology, management, and research. The Great Lakes Commission and USGS make up the core team, which provides long-term administrative support to the collaborative. But we also have an advisory committee, and our advisory committee represents a binational cross-section of Phragmites experts. This committee provides guidance and leadership to the collaborative as it works to develop products, facilitate communication, and foster collaboration across the region. These agencies that I have listed on the screen, these are the current organizations and agencies who serve on our advisory committee. But the core team and the advisory committee alone don't make up the Great Lakes Phragmites Collaborative. The collaborative wouldn't be possible without the support and buy-in from our stakeholders, and we consider our stakeholders to be the Phragmites community. The Phragmites community is made up of anyone in the Great Lakes region who is trying to impact, either through management, research, or outreach efforts, invasive Phragmites, or on the other end of the spectrum, anyone who's being impacted by non-native Phragmites. As you can imagine, the Phragmites community, as we define it, is an extremely large and diverse network that we're trying to serve. So with such a broad-ranging issue and so many stakeholders involved, we really needed a way at the Great Lakes Phragmites Collaborative to structure ourselves that would allow us to strategically work towards a common goal. The collaborative uses an approach called collective impact to do just that and help guide the work that we do. In 2016, the core team published a paper on how we use the principles of collective impact to manage the Phragmites Collaborative. And if anyone is interested in learning a little bit more about how we utilize collective impact, I am happy to send out that paper. My contact information will be available at the end. But for now, I will share with you that there are 5 conditions of collective impact. There is a neutral backbone organization that in this case is the Great Lakes Commission, and that organization anchors the work of the group and provides long-term administrative support. There should be continuous communication with a broad range of stakeholders, a common agenda that defines a shared path forward with defined goals and objectives. There should also be a shared system of measurements to evaluate the effectiveness of and progress of the common agenda. And then finally, mutually reinforcing activities should be defined among the members, and that will help align their efforts towards achieving collective goals. Utilizing a collective impact approach provides us with the systematic way to get from all of the problems that we're currently facing surrounding Phragmites management and research to our vision of a Great Lakes ecosystem that's not degraded by non-native Phragmites. So that's our goal. A lot of these problems that are our root causes, such as funding gaps, management uncertainties, communication barriers, et cetera, these are all the reasons why the collaborative was formed and why it remains relevant and important today. I mentioned that establishing a common agenda was one of the conditions of collective impact. Over the past few years, the core team and the advisory committee have been working to establish just that. The common agenda is really our first big step forward to align all of our regional goals and establish a shared vision for change. The purpose of the common agenda is to clearly define the intentions for the collaborative, develop a shared understanding of gaps and problem areas surrounding Phragmites, and then highlight the areas and strategies that we're working on or that we hope to work on in the near future. So I sent out this infographic, which represents our common agenda and the briefing materials. An email went out about 10 minutes prior through Eventbrite. So if you haven't gotten a chance to look at it, you can reference it there, or if you do have it, feel free to follow along. This is what our common agenda looks like. It contains a vision and purpose for the collaborative and is broken up into 4 focus areas, which are regional coordination and collaboration, best management and restoration planning, advancement of research and technology, and funding for Phragmites management. Each of the focus areas has a subset of 3 or 4 member strategies. And I did want to just spend a little time walking us through some of those member strategies, not all of them, but the ones that the collaborative has really been making progress on over the past near decade since we've been established. A few of our member strategies focus on improving communication gaps. So 2 of those are maintain a forum and network that is routinely used for sharing, discussing, and accessing new and best available information. And then another is to provide a forum for researchers to collaborate and communicate with managers. There's a number of ways that the collaborative is making progress on these member strategies. Our probably best known and biggest resource that the collaborative has is the Great Lakes Phragmites Collaborative website. You can find that at greatlakesphragmites.net. If you haven't checked it out already, I definitely encourage you to do so. The website is meant to be a one-stop hub for all things Phragmites. It provides information on how to identify invasive Phragmites, suggestions for reporting new populations, management and restoration best practices, communication resources for stakeholders at all those levels that I had mentioned that we're trying to reach, and much more. This is also where you can access our Phragmites Net listserv that reaches, at this point, over 750 individuals from across the Great Lakes and beyond. It's a really great forum to ask questions, share information, and connect with other Phragmites stakeholders. We're also striving to improve how we connect managers with the latest research, especially making it accessible in a timely manner that allows managers to learn about and implement new technology and techniques surrounding Phragmites management. One of the ways that we do this is through our long-running webinar series. We are actually launching a new series next Wednesday, so it'll be same time as this webinar, just a week from today. And this next series is focusing on student research surrounding Phragmites. And we do have speakers lined up for the next 6 months or so, and we'll have 1 or 2 presentations each month. And you should be able to shortly find that presentation schedule on our website. We also have nearly 40 archived webinars available to view at any time, also available on our website. One other action that we take to connect researchers and managers is to consolidate all of the latest Phragmites research into just one easy to find searchable location. A quarterly newsletter is sent out with all of the recent Phragmites research, and then all of those papers get archived on our website and is available there. Another member strategy that we're trying to make progress on is identifying obstacles and capacity gaps related to implementing best practices. One way that we're doing this, especially for the private individual or smaller grassroots groups or anyone who's just starting out trying to manage Phragmites on more of a local scale, is trying to connect these individuals with their local invasive species management organizations who are capable, of offering guidance, offering recommendations, and oftentimes offering assistance, either in-kind support or monetary assistance. We do this through hosting an interactive invasive species organizations map that provides contact information for those organizations. Generally, they're SISMAs or PRISMs or CWMAs. And we're just now expanding this map to include Ontario as well. So you can find a link to this on our website. Another member strategy that I wanted to highlight is consolidate and share case studies, success stories, and existing best management guidance. One of the great resources that we've compiled over the years is a series of case studies from past, or some of them are still current, Phragmites management projects that are occurring or have occurred across the Great Lakes. These case studies provide insight on Phragmites management and restoration work that's occurred on a variety of different levels and scales, and then shares lessons learned from those experiences. So you can click through our interactive map and read all about these Phragmites case studies, and there's contact information as well if you're interested in reaching out to those managers and learning more. The last member strategy that I wanted to highlight is supporting and implementing the Phragmites Adaptive Management Framework, or PAMF, to improve our understanding of the effectiveness of different management strategies. So this one, I'm going to spend just a little bit more time on walking us through what PAMF is. PAMF is one of the main products of the collaborative, and as an adaptive management program, it helps Phragmites managers make effective and efficient management decisions. The creation and implementation of PAMF has been a joint effort that's been going on for some time between the Great Lakes Commission, the U.S. Geological Survey, but also the University of Georgia. And just like the broader collaborative, GLRI provides funding support. I think it would be helpful just to give us a little bit of background on why PAMF was established. Phragmites management has been occurring in the region for probably decades, if not more at this point. And some of the common management techniques that are being used include herbicide application, mechanical removals, such as maybe mowing or mulching, prescribed burns, hydrologic manipulations, just to name a few. One thing that all of these management techniques have in common is that they're extremely resource intensive and require an investment of time, staffing, and sometimes specialized equipment. However, an herbicide treatment that you use to treat Phragmites in maybe New York might have completely different results than one applied similarly in Wisconsin. So this uncertainty surrounding management outcomes is really frustrating, especially to the managers that have invested all of these time and resources into implementing them. But that's not to say that all Phragmites management programs are not successful, because we certainly have lots of successful management programs out there. However, even when highly effective management techniques are being used, there's just not a way, or there wasn't previously a mechanism in place that helps us understand what makes them successful and then share them out more broadly with the Phragmites community. So at the collaborative, we had to ask ourselves, how can we do better? How can we better support managers, help them make management decisions that are going to be effective and that aren't going to have a lot of uncertainty surrounding the outcomes that they're seeing? We wanted to implement something on a large scale that would help the entirety of the Great Lakes region. An important outcome that we were hoping to achieve would be reducing the trial and error approach to management, where management plans were previously just being scrapped and rewritten each year because desirable results just were not being achieved. If we could find a way to maybe untangle some of that uncertainty surrounding the site conditions and management timing, then maybe we would be able to find a way to improve the efficacy and efficiency of Phragmites management throughout the region. With the help of a technical working group, we decided to design a program that utilized adaptive management. And this would allow us a way to systematically learn from management outcomes, thus reducing the uncertainty surrounding what management outcomes we were seeing, and change the way that we manage so that the trial and error approach need not be implemented in the future. If designed correctly, this adaptive management program would allow us to improve the overall effectiveness and efficiency of Phragmites management across the region. So that's just what we did. In 2017, we began the first annual cycle of the Phragmites Adaptive Management Framework. This image shows what PAMF looks like from the participant perspective. And I wanted to just quickly walk us through the annual steps of participation. Phragmites patches are enrolled into the program by participants. These patches are simply the area in which Phragmites managers are intending to control Phragmites in some uniform way over the next 12 months. We'd call them management units once they're enrolled into the program. And a management unit can be any size. We have some that are 1/10 of an acre, and then we have some that are over 100 acres that are currently enrolled. And enrollment can happen anytime during the year. Then each July, managers are responsible for monitoring their enrolled patches, and they use a standardized set of techniques that we have outlined in the program to do so. This gives us a starting point, helps us understand the invasion of Phragmites within each management unit. We do provide a monitoring kit and training resources to help participants collect the highest quality, unbiased data possible. Then, based off of the information provided in the enrollment and monitoring reports that are submitted by participants, our learning model is able to predict which combinations of management techniques are likely to be the most effective and efficient at controlling Phragmites at that particular location. The prediction is then sent out in the form of management guidance, and each management unit enrolled receives a unique set of management guidance, and that includes an optimal combination and some near optimal combinations that are likely to work nearly as well. The guidance doesn't provide instructions on implementation techniques, since that would really limit our participation. Instead, we provide details on a variety of implementation techniques that participants can choose from. Participants then go out and they manage over the next 12 months. Each management action that they take does require just a brief form to be submitted back to PAMF, and that documents what actions are taken and details on how each action was executed. So the next July rolls around and managers go back out, revisit their management units that they enrolled the previous year, and conduct those same standardized monitoring protocols. The second round of monitoring data allows us to understand the effectiveness of those management actions. And now we have this before and after data on the invasion that we can feed into our model and help it improve the guidance in following years. And this cycle just continues iteratively until there's no Phragmites left within the site. We did recently establish a strategic plan that outlines the goals and objectives for the next 5 years of the program. This was also included in the briefing materials, and I'd encourage you to go ahead and take a look. It will tell you a lot more about what we're trying to learn and accomplish through PAMF. The strategic plan has a mission and a vision for the program, and then it outlines goals and objectives that are nested under 4 focus areas. One of the great aspects of the program, probably the thing that I like best, is that PAMF is intentionally designed so that anyone, and I mean anyone, who's planning to manage or is already managing Phragmites within the Great Lakes is able to participate. The program is free to join, and we have a huge variety of training resources to help interested participants be successful. So if you are in the Great Lakes Basin or if you're in a surrounding watershed, you are able to participate. Since 2017, PAMP has engaged 71 Phragmites managers who have in turn enrolled 220 management units. We have representation from all 8 Great Lakes states and Ontario at this point, but we are hoping to get some folks from Quebec enrolled soon. Just in our last cycle year, which ran from August 2019 to July 2020, we were able to engage 42 Phragmites managers who were actively managing 133 management units across the Great Lakes. This worked out to over 500 acres or over 200 hectares actively being managed and enrolled in PAMP. The data received from the past 3 cycle years has provided the model with hundreds of data points that are contributing to our understanding of Phragmites management outcomes and helping us develop best management practices that we hope to share out once we have enough data. We have been able to engage really a huge variety of organizations into the program at this point. This figure shows the number of management units, managers, and organizations, so those 3 different scales that PAMP has engaged from various organizations. We have participation from state, local, and provincial, and federal, and even tribal governments, conservation organizations, SISMAs and CWMAs, private individuals and landowners, academics, and even independent businesses. One way that we've been able to engage such a wide variety of participants is with the help of Sustain Our Great Lakes, or SOGL. SOGL is a public-private partnership designed to sustain, restore, and protect fish and wildlife habitat in the basin. And it does this by leveraging funding, building conservation capacity, and focusing partners and resources towards key ecological issues. So some of you on the line, many other Phragmites managers out there across the region receive SOGL funding to help fund their Phragmites projects. And this arrangement really helps SOGL dollars go a bit further. So the SOGL money is now being funded or now being used to fund managers who are contributing data to PAMP and helping us advance our collective learning efforts. But also those managers are receiving annual management guidance that should improve the efficacy and efficiency of their management efforts. We'd really love to see similar support from other Great Lakes funders in the future who are funding management of Phragmites. If anyone listening would like to get involved, we do have a live virtual training session that is going to take place on May 25th. Registration information should be available shortly, but if you're interested, please reach out to us at pamp@glc.org, and I can provide you with additional details on the program and let you know when the registration is available. In addition to that virtual training session, we will be launching probably 2 weeks from now a self-guided training resource that is utilizing the Moodle learning platform. And that is going to help anyone who's interested in joining learn everything they need to know about how to participate in PAMP and then be a reference for them in the future when they go out to enroll and monitor. We also have developed additional video and text resources that are currently available on the Great Lakes Phragmites Collaborative website as well. So going back to the common agenda, as you can see over the near decade now that we've been in place, we've made a lot of progress towards our vision of a Great Lakes ecosystem that's not degraded by non-native Phragmites. I did want to highlight just some of our key accomplishments. So one of the key accomplishments has been our effort of the collaborative to establish a network for sharing information and best practices surrounding Phragmites management and restoration activities. We're doing this through the administration of PAMP, that's a big one, but also by hosting our listserv and compiling best available resources surrounding Phragmites management and making them easily accessible to that huge variety of stakeholders on our website. Another key outcome that I wanted to highlight is the collaborative's research coordination through the advisory committee's efforts and resource sharing. A lot of the work that we have done has allowed us to identify some of those research and technology gaps so that they may be filled in the future. Our efforts have also allowed for managers to have fast access to the latest research so that they're able to incorporate it into their management plans. And we're mainly doing this through our webinar series that I mentioned, research roundup newsletters, as well as efforts sustained through the advisory committee's engagement. But even though we've made lots of progress over the past, this isn't something that we're just trying to take on as a core team or as an advisory committee. Remember, the collaborative and the common agenda, this is meant to be a shared vision of change for everyone in the Great Lakes Phragmites Collaborative community, and we need your help. So that's why we are putting out our call to action. This was also included in the briefing material, so please feel free to read through that again after. There are some steps that you can take to help us continue making progress on our common agenda. One action that we're asking Phragmites managers in the region to take is just to join PAMP, participate. After completing the training, it's a pretty low time commitment. PAMP participants with one management unit typically spend 3 to 5 hours annually, so not much time to participate fully in PAMP. This small time investment can make a large impact on our collective learning effort and help managers across the region as well. Because remember, all data that goes into the model is then shared out with other managers through that management guidance that's provided annually. I know a lot of you joining us today have been managing Phragmites for many years and have lots of management or research experience. If you do have resources that may be helpful to other Phragmites professionals, consider sending those to us or sending those out through the listserv. You can always email us at that phragmites@glc.org email, and allowing us to host those resources on our website. That we strive to not only create our own resources, but to utilize the existing ones that are out there. Now, thinking back to how widespread of an issue Phragmites is, both geographically and in terms of impacts, working on a larger scale or managing Phragmites is going to give you the best chance of success. So not just doing things on a site-by-site level or on a county level or even watershed level, but thinking more broadly. That's going to really be where our successes come from. We'd encourage you to coordinate management efforts with others in your area to make that happen. Finally, consider how your activities or the activities of the agency or organization that you're associated with can be aligned with the collaborative. We'd really like to hear from you on how your work can contribute to advancing the common agenda and what we can do as staff to facilitate that. So that brings us to the end of the briefing materials that I wanted to share with you today. Again, all of the resources that we sent out in that email about 10 minutes prior to the start of the webinar, please go ahead, check those out, look at the common agenda. But I do want to open it up for questions at this time. So everyone is going to just remain muted, but Ned will help us by reading out your questions that you submit through the Q&A chat box. If you don't have questions at this time, or you have additional questions that you think of in the future, go ahead and email us. Let me put my contact information up. Again, my name is Samantha Tank, and I am the Great Lakes Phragmites Collaborative and PAMP coordinator. And you can reach me either at sam@glc.org or phragmites@glc.org. And my inbox is always open. So again, I'll just open